Ready?
Yep.
Okay, well, welcome everybody to the September 11th Ad hoc Charter Review and Revision Board meeting. Ralph, I think. Take the roll.
Yes, sir. Mr. Band is absent. Julie Basner.
Here.
Mr. Goldberg,
I'm here.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Present.
Mr. Tone,
Present.
Mr. Starkman.
Here.
And Mr. Rabin is absent. You have a quorum.
Okay, so we have a forum. Welcome, everybody. It is September 11th, so maybe officially I'd like to recognize the significance of today and all of those first responders and others who were caught up in that terrible incident 22 years ago. We don't have minutes for this meeting to be approved, so we can just dispense with that for now and start up on item 1 of our agenda, which has to do with a presentation from the city attorney's office on the section 2.02 regarding compensation. This is a new item for a charter review, I know, and it's been discussed many times over the years that the city's been in existence. It is a worthwhile topic to have as a conversation for us as well, so we might as well have the conversation and see where we might end up with respect to this subject. So Nick, city attorney, I'll allow you to lead us and advise who will be presenting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On this one, on item number 1 pertaining to the salary and compensation of the mayor and members of the city commission, I've asked our special counsel, Shane Olin, to present the current state of the charter and possible.
Good afternoon, everybody. So last year in 2022, the city commission considered this item. It had been the idea of salary increase had been presented to the voters at least 4 times prior, but it was never approved. In 2022, the city commission had a slightly different take on a method of presenting the issue to the voters, and it was premised upon the idea of that instead of being a CPI index as they had tried in the past, that the idea would be based upon the city's budget, evidencing how that the original establishment of salary, which was first put in the charter in 1966, that the charter had increased to the point where that should have been justification as an explanation, a valid explanation to explain to the voters. The commission could not reach consensus, and at that point, knowing that charter review would be formed now, that they decided to defer the matter for charter review board's consideration. So we're now looking at, I'm sure you all have read through, its charter section 2.02, and it reads as follows. It says, the annual compensation, this is relevant language in 2.02. It's actually one of the final paragraphs. There's other language in there concerning term of office. We're not discussing term of office today. This is just focused upon the compensation issue. The language reads, the annual compensation for the office of commissioner shall be $6,000, and the compensation for the office of mayor shall be $10,000. Any increase in salary for mayor and or commissioner shall require approval of a majority of the electorate voting at a city election. So just as a little footnote, you all know that second sentence is a little redundant because anything in the charter that you seek to change has to be approved by the voters. One of the problems that we have faced, because part of the issues are the problems that we've had with these charter sections that you're reviewing, is when you read the language that I just alluded to, it references compensation of the commissioner being $6,000 and $10,000 for the mayor, and the requirement that salary increases be approved by the voter. Every other charter officer that's referenced in the city charter, such as the city attorney, the city clerk, the IG, I don't know, is the IG's office established? The salary established in the charter? But certainly for the city attorney, the city manager, and the city clerk, their salaries are referenced as, their compensation is specifically referenced in the charter. It is not alluded to as salary. So one of the fixes
The
that
auditor
needs
is
to
compensation established by ordinance, just like the.
Oh, the IG system, thank you. So one of the issues that will need to be done, and maybe this is more of a tweak than a substantive discussion, is we suggest that the word salary be deleted from 202. It should be a global reference to compensation. Now, since the compensation was established back in 1966, clearly the $6,000 and $10,000 amount no longer really seems relevant. But in the prior presentations to the voters, which have never been approved, there have been different types of explanations to seek to explain to the voters why the salary increase is timely. I will tell you that of the local municipalities, keep in mind the majority of their charters also have antiquated compensation amounts. And the reason for that is because just like Miami Beach, it's a charter that was established back in the 1920s or the 1930s, where maybe 6,000 and 10,000 then had some relevance. And the only way to amend those sections is, as we are presented with the issue now, is obtaining voter approval. The city of Miami is different. The city of Miami, in I think it was 2013, which also had relatively low compensation amounts for their members of the elected body, was amended in 2013, and the voters approved it at a special election, increasing the salary from, I think it was 6,000 to 58,000. And the mayor's salary in Miami is higher because the mayor in the city of Miami has certain executive mayoral powers. He's not a complete executive mayor, but he has certain executive mayor powers. So he has higher salary than the 58,000 that the city commissioners receive. In Miami-Dade County, so now we're talking about local governments that have salaries that are somewhat within the range of reasonableness in the year 2023, as opposed to the $6,000, $10,000 amount. In Miami-Dade County, their salaries also reflect a low amount because their salaries were approved back in 1957 when the Miami-Dade County Home Rule Charter was approved by the county voters. Ironically, and I say ironically because normally, in order to establish the county commissioner's salary, the county would revert to the statutory formula that's established by state law. And it establishes the county commissioner's salary for non-charter counties, however. If you have a home rule charter, which Miami-Dade County does, their provisions apply for their salaries. So that is why the county commission, which has also presented at least, I believe, 7 times, something like that, draft suggestive amendments to the county charter to increase the salary. Much the same type of analysis that Miami Beach prior ballot questions have presented to voters, namely a certain flat dollar amount with a CPI index with reference to the annual budget. The county voters have never approved it. Last year, however, the Miami Herald reported that the county commissioners and the mayor are receiving well in excess of the county charter's salary amount. But the reason for that is because the other benefits that are being approved, that have been approved by the county commission, do not fall under the heading of salary. In Miami Beach, though, keep in mind, we have the word compensation. So for transparency purposes too, and I'm not suggesting the county has done anything wrong, but for transparency purposes, that is our recommendation. We're operating under amending, or you all will be deliberating the issue of amending Charter 202 to further reflect what is the full compensation of the city commission. Now, in the past, the city commission has received other matters that are related to car allowance, a monthly
Can
stipend.
we do that? Let me
I'm
just
sorry.
go through that here. If you could just tick off, everybody understand what would be considered total compensation for a commissioner and mayor, because it's other than the salary, all the other benefits are the same, right?
If you could go to page 41
Okay, so
of your
Yeah.
of your agenda. What's in yellow is Miami Beach.
So what is in yellow reflects the dollar amounts in addition to the 6,000 per commissioner, the annual 6,000 per commissioner, and the annual 10,000 for the mayor.
So it's-
That they receive, and I believe they receive it on a monthly basis.
Yeah, how they get
Is
it
that correct, Rob?
is,
Yes.
that's not,
On a monthly
Yeah, yes.
basis.
so they have, there's a stipend of $2,000.
The mayor gets
2,000.
2,000, the commissioners get 2,250.
They get more
The mayor voted
to make
down
it.
his item when everybody else is there.
Okay, so the mayor gets
3,000.
another $24,000 and the commission gets what?
27,000.
27. So that's the stipend, and then they have vehicle allowance is the same for
6,000
everyone,
per
so that's
year.
6,000 per year for each.
And they also, have-
And the telephone is, how much is that? equal
and
to per year?
if they elect to receive it, it's 1,300 per year.
13.
Some choose not to.
Okay, that's okay, but
Yeah,
it's there, it's available.
yeah,
And then it's mayor's 10.
Yep.
And
Commissioners
it's 6, so what is that? So it's 27, 33, 39, that's 40,000.
for the mayor and
No, for the mayor is 24, 30, 40, 41, 300.
you didn't take them.
But
Yes.
if
and
there
the
were different
title.
mayor could take it.
Yeah.
Okay,
The,
well,
the second and the third columns are the salary.
correct, I got that. And
Yeah.
then,
What is the total for the commission?
so as I understand here is the mayor is 41,300. And for the commissioners, it's 40,300. Whether this mayor takes it or not, it's there and it's available
Right.
to them, I guess.
Right.
And then on health insurance, the city does what, pays for the individual and then the family is separate, or how does that benefit get?
That was
Provided.
my question.
Like a text more or less, I don't know.
I think it's both. I think it's the member and their family if they
They
elect.
But they pay, normally they pay the premium, right?
Yeah,
co-pay,
the city pays this,
City
right,
pays 50% and the employee pays 50%? How does that
I
work
thought it
out?
was, I thought,
I don't know that.
Because,
I gotta,
because premiums and
That's significant.
it's huge, and
It's significant.
and the same with dependents. And
Just got a sense here.
do they have life insurance or any of that, or I mean, is there?
They're
Is it
entitled to
pension?
it. They
There
can
is-
elect.
So we'll get to the pension in a second.
Okay,
So-
because that's not as.
so-
Okay, thank you.
Marla is here, Marla is the HR director.
Hi, Marla, how are you?
Marla, have a seat, yeah,
Come on, have a seat up here. The question is, as it relates to health insurance premiums for the elected officials.
Yes,
You know, it can be individual, family plus one, whatever that categorization is, but is it paid 100% or is it some portion and then they have to pay some portion,
It's the same as all the other. things.
which is,
Yes, it's a
50%?
portion and so it depends on which package you get. Would you like me to go and bring that? I can go get it real quick.
do that.
I'm gonna text them right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, depending on which plan that you purchase.
Right.
You select, it's different. Obviously, it's skewed more to.
Yeah, your
employee
driving behavior
benefit
and
then
HMOs and PPOs and all that stuff.
Do you happen to know offhand how many take advantage of that? Of our,
so based on our budget this year, there are 2 people who are taking proper
100%.
insurance, everybody else is like $46. So they're probably doing like a life or a minimum.
Yeah.
benefits.
They're
But
insured
these
somewhere else, they can
people
choose not to.
Are taking
Yeah.
the full.
And Brian, by the way, I have my back to you. So
I can hear everything.
Okay, I don't see your hand raised or anything like that, so just feel free to chime in. if
No,
you-
Yeah, I'm just listening to this. I want to wait for everyone to finish before I give my thoughts, but it feels to me like the bigger question here is, right now, these positions, especially the mayor, are compensated. I'm not going to say compensated as though they're voluntary positions because they are making some money, but it's pretty clear why up till now we've had mayors in recent years who have had sort of previous careers, why the role has been pursued by people who maybe have retired from a business career. It explains why most of the commissioners, are still practicing lawyers or continue to run small businesses while they serve in government.
Mhm.
So, if what we're debating is some sort of incremental 3, 4, 5% raise, that doesn't really move the needle, that's fine. I mean, I don't really care about that. I think the question here is do we want to sort of step function the compensation such that a person could hypothetically make a living doing this? Or are we happy with this being essentially a side job for those who make most of their income elsewhere? Because that feels like what we're really, the meat of what really is strategically worth discussing here. And that does change, that does speak to the nature of government.
Fair enough, and so, yeah, Maria, if you can just find out, and
We just went through our open enrollment, so it has the full
Just the
package with
formularies,
the sheet. I'll run it out right back.
and then they also have pension, which is
Right.
a defined benefit program covering all of this. It's their average earnings is based on all of the total compensation, not just the salary.
If you want to, this is our pension director.
So that's 4% per year.
Good afternoon, I'm Rick Rivera, I'm the administrator. I know a lot of you.
So their pension is now changed to if you serve for 4 years.
Right.
You're
That's
vested.
short. Would that
Uh,
affect the actuarial value? Or as part of their compensation?
Not so much their compensation, it's, you know, globally, there's an actual value impact because it's you're vesting sooner. But it's still a percentage of payroll blended throughout the organization, so. You know, I don't know that there's enough there financially to change it. I think, well, one of the things we should do too, Brian, in addition to your comment is. If there's a loophole or a inconsistency where they're allowed to change other remuneration efforts, that should be closed or not.
Well,
So-
as part of compensation. Accounting is fuzzy on this, but isn't there an amount that, from an accounting standpoint, that gets a set charge to somebody for the fact that they're participating in a pension plan that gets accrued every year?
Right, some of these items are treated as pensionable and others are not.
No,
Right,
but
but I
your
meant the
question
actual
is so
Pension
annually,
benefit. Is okay, so
So there's a-
even if you're years away from pension. Is part of your looking at an annual basis, is there an accrual that's tied to for an individual?
it's not A to B directly, but every individual accrues what's a liability to the pension system. And then the annual, an amount that you have to contribute, not for that individual, but just global. And that individual's included in this global amount, and then you factor it back down to like a percentage of payroll.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can't draw the direct line. So there's not an account for Mayor Gelbert. But there is a benefit that he has accrued of 6 years times 4 is 24% of $41,000. That's his benefit. The cost of that is built into the overall actuarial analysis.
Right. And they vested 4 now.
They've got the 4 now, and that was changed. That's the thing that I guess happened last year.
Even
This
the
is
ma-
hard to understand. Sorry, I'm trying to follow this. Are we saying that Mayor Levine is still getting paid?
No. Well, no, wait. Yes, Mayor Levine, sir. No, Mayor Levine 4 years.
Right.
So he would not be getting paid. But Dan Gelber, once he finishes, he will be entitled not to the 41,000, but to 4% of every year he served. Times the 41,000
This commission voted to change the vesting requirement
from 5 to 4.
from 5 to 4, which means that. Those who served only one, who are serving only one term will now be vested in the pension, whereas before they had to be. Reelected effectively to serve additional time, and the mayor would have had to serve 3 terms, and I guess Levine only served 2.
And we
So-
say vested, that's on a 24-year schedule. So if they serve 6 years out of 24, then they make a quarter of 10,000 a year or so.
Brian, what they do is it's basically a simple 4% per year of service. So.
Okay, so
You served 6 years.
25 years,
4%.
25 years is a full term.
Yeah, 25 years, but they can't serve 25 years because they're term limited.
Yeah,
So the
exactly, okay.
maximum, there's a maximum of some point.
Well, but they could serve, remember that they could serve 3 2-year terms for
right.
mayor, and they could serve 2 4-year terms for.
Right, maximum
That's
is
the max.
14 times 8
Right.
to 4.
Right.
Remember that 28,
Yeah,
56%.
that's the max.
something like that. So Dan will, when he retires, and he's of age, so he would get 24% of 41, so about $10,000, give or take, per year for the rest of his life. Which is what the pension is. I'm not begrudging that. I think that one of the things that would be concerning is that they keep changing that. Or
Well, that they can,
changing it
well,
without.
the current language, and I know you're getting there, it's not, doesn't seem to, if you look at their compensation, the vast majority of it is not subject to voter approval.
Correct.
And when they go to voters to ask for the increase, they usually leave out the fact that they're
All the
getting
others.
this other compensation.
Correct.
And yet the voters voted down even without that information, so I would like to see the language be such that it takes into account, well, I think that's direct all compensation and even, and any changes to the pension might also require some measure, there's some.
So hold that thought, 'cause
Yes.
I agree with you, but I wanna go kind of triage the questions then maybe, and, Brian's, I think, is kind of the fundamental first question. That is, should this position be a full-time adequately compensated position or a part-time? I'm not gonna suggest that 6,000 and 10,000 is adequately paid anyway, but the number might be different if it's full-time versus the part-time requirement that we have today. And in this form of government, where, it's a council manager form of government, the manager runs the administration. Do we need 7 full-time individuals also spending full time working, on trying to also run the organization, or, when really they should be setting policy?
I think they're like a board of directors
Correct.
almost, and so I would say no.
And one of
This-
the, I've spoken to a couple of people about this, and one of their issues is that that it limits who can actually run for commission because they can't live on this, so that's.
So we'll get to
another
that, we'll
thing.
get to that number, but fundamentally, do
It's-
we think
it's-
it's the board of directors like, which is come set policy, give directions, let the folks do it? Julie, what's your?
I don't get that sense. I get the sense that they're, but then again, I'm seeing it obviously just through the lens that I see it, and it seems to me to be a scope, the scope of the work seems to involve more time, and I do agree that, we have concerns about our residents not being able to afford to work in Miami Beach, and why should we exclude, public servants from that same.
Michael, you're late to the party, but
I'm late to the party. There's a balance. No one's gonna suggest, given the role of the commissioner, that it's a full-time job. And so that they should be compensated as if it's a full-time job. So the question remains. I'd be curious to know by speaking, and maybe George, you might know. The average commissioner, does he spend or she spend 20% of a work week? Is that which would be 8 hours, 10 hours a week? To serve as a commissioner, that seems to me, ought to be in some fashion compensated in a way so that, not that it's attractive, but not that it's unattractive to people who might say, I really would like to serve, but I'm an average working guy. I'm gonna lose 20% of my wages. And $6,000 or $10,000 is not gonna make it up. The
Yeah.
real issue in my mind, whether it's at the county or here, voters invariably never vote to increase the wages of commissioners or mayors or any public official for that matter, which I think is unfortunate. But,
See,
you
I,
know,
I think the answer to that, your question about the average, there's no real average, I don't think. I mean, each commissioner or mayor takes it upon themselves to approach it differently. Some who perhaps are either retired or not working, or spouses or whatever might spend a lot more time here than perhaps the staff would want. And others, you know, who have full-time jobs elsewhere, dedicate the time they can. Certainly, it's not just the meetings at the commission, you know, the official commission meetings, or the committee meetings, and then there's a lot of events. Some are more diligent at attending everything, and some are, you know, able to attend the things that they are interested in. I'm of the opinion that if it's a policy-making body, it's not a full-time job. And, you know, it is an amount from the workday that they somehow figure out. Some have outside employment, some are independently wealthy, and some are retired, I guess. And so in that regard, that's up to whoever got themselves
but
elected.
I guess my question is, does it shrink the pool of applicants to be mayor or commissioners? If, you know, I want to be diligent, I want to do a good job, but I'm not taking this job for $6,000 a year, and it's gonna cost me 25
Yeah.
grand or 30 grand or something like
I
that.
think it's like a needle that we need to thread here. Currently, I think it shrinks the pool. I believe if we made it full-time, it'll shrink the pool as well. There's a bunch of people that say,
Oh, I
no way, I'm not
agree,
putting
but you're
my
never,
outside
you're
job.
never
for
gonna
that either.
compensate them enough.
Exactly. And so I think we need to kind of figure out what's the right number? Fair to the residents, fair to the individual. I would like to see something that says, all right, whatever that is, it's that, and it's not all these other things. And you can't give yourself these other things in the future either, because the spirit of this was to,
The 6,000, 10,000, where does that number come from?
that's in the charter.
No, I understand that. How old is that number?
Oh, and I did the math.
1966.
So I did the math.
1966.
And if you just do, you can do it
Just a
online anyway.
simple, 4%.
CPI, no, just CPI, if you just online, you can do it. 6,066 equates to $55,999 today. And 10,000 equates to 93,332 today, if you just took the historical CPI. Now,
And by the way, the prior ballot questions that the city has submitted to the city voters, the dollar figures have not been that high.
yeah, the last one looks like it was 75 and
Yeah.
45. And it failed too, so
Right.
now,
Though you don't know what stipend they got at that time.
in 66,
Yeah, whether, because
Probably
what's
zero.
happened is the stipend is kind of.
probably zero though.
Yeah.
These things are more recent occurrences.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question just for clarification on my end? Is the committee okay with the initial recommendation that Gene made that whatever amendment we do be amended to address total compensation versus salary?
I think we're headed there. I think we're headed there. We should, because they seem to be interchangeable anyway, but
Yeah.
I think whatever we talk about should be comprehensive.
Okay.
And compensation, I think, is the right term to use.
Well, I just want to say one thing, that the city has not viewed them as interchangeable, because that is our reasoning why
You
they,
have a lot of one
we,
anyway,
we view them as legal, that there have been prior ballot.
Right.
That there have not been questions with regards to
the
the,
stipends and.
you know, the stipends.
So I would think we should pursue let's just call it compensation, and it's everything.
Do we know what that number is?
But we don't know, that's what we're gonna
Well,
discuss.
I just want to add one other ingredient to this soup. And that is that, you know, I think the question is not would be required to create the pool that anybody could serve versus what, you know, should we look at this a little bit like the job market, say, are we getting enough qualified people at the pay we have? Because it's not only pay, there's also a prestige element to sure. There's that, you know, that doesn't come with a normal job. People
There's
wanna
future
do that.
work and future
There-
opportunity, there's a, and your.
And reservations.
Huh?
Your ability to get
Reservations.
Yes,
reservations.
yeah, that
And
helps.
So-
parties.
You know, so that.
There's an
partly-
intrinsic value,
Yeah.
and it's non-taxable, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry to jump in here. I know, I feel like I gotta
Please.
be a little assertive here, just, but, I agree 110% with that sentiment. You know, the first thing I thought to myself is, are we getting quality candidates for all of these roles? And I'll tell you, you know, I've only lived here for a few years. I'm actually impressed with the quality we tend to get for a lot of these roles. And sometimes in the commission races, especially, there'll be 2, 3, 4 good candidates. For mayor as well. You know, and a pretty diverse array of them. You know, this year we have, you know, we have sort of a lot of different kind of molds. We have the candidate who's sort of the business mogul who's ready to retire and do this. We have the, you know, career politicians. We have, you know, we've had, you know, people with legal backgrounds. We have LGBT diversity. So we have, like, I feel that, you know, there's a good mix in there. I don't feel like if we gave these roles a $20,000 raise and cost the taxpayers a 6-figure amount of money, we'd be getting a lot better candidates. I mean, these are really competitive roles, and the kind of the semi-voluntary nature of them, I think, is a positive. I think we're getting a lot of folks who are either freshly retired or semi-retired, who are finally sort of ready to do this as sort of a final act of their working careers. So by that benchmark that was just cited, I think we are getting quality candidates. I don't think money is going to incentivize a huge new wave of candidates. And dare I say it, if money were incentivizing a big new wave of candidates, I'd wonder who these candidates are.
Mhm. And Brian, you know, that's fair, and I recognize and respect it. I look at it more as like, all right, so 1966 is, you know, almost 60 years ago. And if we're gonna look at this, you know, can we fix this to bring it a little more relevant to this century at least?
Mhm.
And with an eye towards fairness. I agree. I don't think that whatever dollar we put in here is going to be the main reason one does or doesn't decide to run for office. It may afford somebody who's perhaps not independently well off, but who can, you know, make it work with that salary plus another job. Whereas before they couldn't do that. But I don't know that this is going to be the thing that drives the decision on who runs or who doesn't run. I'm more interested in trying to, you know, be true to what was intended, which is whatever the salary is, or let me say, whatever the compensation is, that's what it is. And you go with eyes wide open coming into this, not with the idea that then you can give yourself all these additional benefits along the way. And by the way, I also think that in light of some of the stuff that's been in the media recently about, say, there in Miami, where, you know, if you do sign up for this, you ought not be able to enrich yourself unduly by virtue of your title or your position, which seems to be what's coming out, at least in the Herald, with the mayor. And so I'd like to maybe close some loopholes. And I think that the only way, in my opinion, as a political scientist, is the only way this even has a chance is to find the right number, but then put in these loophole closing mechanisms. So at least the voters are taking back that control, because otherwise I don't see any number passing it. It failed last year. If 2 years ago, it failed 3 years ago, it's failed 5 years ago, it's failed 15 years ago. But if it were written up in such a way that there's a give and a take, then maybe it has an opportunity. And at least I would like to acknowledge that, yeah, 6 and 10 is not the right, and it's not fair, and it doesn't seem, you know, proper for a community like ours, which we can afford it. We should, you know, be recognizing the people that are volunteering. They're volunteering, but kind of volunteering properly.
Do we also want to include CPI? So we don't have to,
Do this
if
again.
it passes, so that it's included. And
It's a good practice, but I think it hurts, not helps the voter to pass it.
Well, what may help, would be to say something along these lines, that salary is currently 6,000, but, you know, other compensation totals brings that total to whatever.
41.
Currently, no way to limit words, but currently, only the salary portion is subject to voter approval, and there are no constraints on the other elements, including health, you know, other benefits, and so forth, So the proposal is to have total compensation at X number and close the loophole on these other things, and that's what you're voting for. So you're
Right.
getting.
Yeah, you're getting both. You're getting a give and a get.
Yeah, so
I think
that
the
may make
CPI
people more likely to vote for it if when they realize that there's a big portion of compensation.
It's out of the. Mike, I agree that the right thing to do is kind of index it, but I don't see it as helping pass with that. I think that by definition, it gets reviewed or should be reviewed every 10
I
years.
think regardless, it's a heavy lift.
Yep.
I think given the historical nature of these attempts to raise county salary, local municipal salaries, I don't know any that have passed. You know,
That's why it's 6 and 10.
and the question is, I guess, do we shoot for the whole enchilada out of a sense of fairness? Or do we just say, well, look, your total compensation is 41,000, or maybe it should be 50,000? But how does that work? If I'm elected, okay, my total compensation 50, do I allocate? I want half of it in salary now, and because my healthcare plan is covered at work, I'll take that money and put it in something else. My car, is it up to the individual commissioner then to,
I think you would give them a salary and it's up to the commissioner to decide how they're gonna spend it.
well, you wouldn't give them a salary, you give them a
Wages.
compensation
Yeah,
package.
I'm sorry, you
And
give
then
them
they
the
can
wages.
say, I'll take the whole thing as salary, or I'll take half the salary, half as car, a little bit for insurance.
Oh,
But
yeah,
the health insurance would be
yeah, no,
separate and apart.
Yes, health and pension is fixed, in my opinion, that's whatever is the benefit. On the dollars, we call it salary, they call it the dollars, I'll let the administration decide, but I think the easiest thing is to just say, here's your bi-weekly or monthly dollars. If that helps pay for your car, then great, if your car's paid off, then spend it on going to an event or anything else that you were paying your stipend with, but I don't know that you guys wanna be
No,
doing like a cafeteria.
no, they would take up a lot.
Yeah, in the old days, there used to be tax benefits for having something labeled a car allowance or labeled, different from standard compensation, and that has been eliminated. in
It's all
the
taxable
latest
and everything,
tax
yeah.
rules. So it's just salary, and if you call it auto allowance or car allowance, it's not taxed any differently
Yeah.
than salary, so.
Then
that's-
that, individual. can
Well,
decide.
then, well, look, then it's easy.
Yeah.
It's easy, it's just, this is the number.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't think
let's-
we should be in the business of trying to create these tiny, silly tax gimmicks for the commission. Like I
Sure.
get it, but it's so silly. Let's give them a number. Let's make it a number that counts, and then let's revisit this in another 10 years.
That's what I would say, instead of the CPIs, by definition, it gets looked at as a charter review, because it's a 10-year thing. Because putting the CPI in, I think it disincentivizes the voter. I think the incentive for the voter is, I'm closing the loophole, you can't change it anymore. You need to live within the spirit of what's established. And so the question becomes, forget 6 and 10, it's really 41, 40. For the, actually, it's 44 or 40 is really what it should be. I don't think that, I think even that is still probably low for what's required and what's expected. So I don't know that I would just say, hey, let's lock this in and, legitimize it somehow. Is it 56 and 93? Is it 180? Is it?
I don't
Now
think
we're getting
there's
into
a
the,
big gap between the.
I don't think there needs to be,
Between the commissioner and mayor. There can be some gap because the
I-
mayor has other
but not,
ceremonial duties
so
they have
big.
to do. But
I would argue that it doesn't need to be that big, but, the mayor is more than the commissioner, but not dramatically so, and if you don't wanna create that image that, there's a significant difference between the mayor and the commissioner.
how about 50 and 75 or 60 and 80? Or 6, are we looking to come up with a number?
I think you need it. Julie, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say you definitely need a number to advise, because you need to put the ballot question for purpose of Remember,
Put the
we
number.
discussed that the statute requires we state the chief purpose of the measure. So we must put in the ballot question to change from 6 and 10 to blank and blank. We have to. put in
Where
the
does-
purpose.
Julie,
I guess he came up with the 45,381 and the 75,636. I mean, there's no way to know why, whether the objection was more towards the steep increase in the mayor's compensation.
That must have been based on CPI.
I'm guessing that was
Yeah.
CPI.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, yeah.
The same with
But it
in
wasn't.
2018.
It was.
So I have a question. You come up with whatever the figure is. Where does stipend and the extra ancillary expenses and where does all that go? Does that go
It's
away?
away.
Yeah.
It all goes away. That's my intention.
Okay, I'm just asking because
The idea is
I'm looking through this list. I really don't see a whole lot of, extra. Aventura has nothing. I mean, Bell Harbor is not, you guys have,
No different.
it's, yeah, but I mean, but Bay Harbor, none. Coral Gables is hardly anything. I mean, you get a laptop in Golden Beach.
So, right, to be clear, you want to do two things that I've heard. You want to, number one, change salary to total compensation. So that's approved by voter referendum. And then you also want to establish a base compensation number increasing from what's currently there as
That
salary.
is total compensation and eliminates all of the bennies other than health and pension. I think they
Total
should continue
compensation, not including the
health
health and
and,
the pension.
I think the health and pension, it's best to just leave that. And that it can't be changed in the future. That, sometime in the
Yes.
future, it can't
Well,
be added back
that
or
portion
recreated.
of Charter 202 will stay in and should be expressly referenced within the ballot question so that the voters understand that any change at all has to obtain voter approval.
Right, I'm not worried about the voters, I'm worried about the commissioners. They're the ones that, this is clear that, in lieu, in exchange for. There's this, lock essentially that you're.
Well, they could amend the pension ordinance.
I'm suggesting that.
But the only thing that's tricky about
give
that is
themselves
that
a
we know
vote.
the fluctuating cost of health insurance. So, and health insurance is not included in compensation right now. So I don't know how you
No,
want to
it would
carve,
be included in the ballot. In the ballot question, it's like, if they're getting X amount of dollars for total compensation.
so health
It
insurance,
would take into their insurance and their pension,
okay,
because insurance and pension are compensation,
So they,
but it's just the dollar amount that
Okay.
needs to be.
But in addition
Got it.
to.
got it.
in
Okay.
addition
the-
to-
but the-
because
all right,
they're-
I didn't
their,
understand.
their health
But Raoul
insurance
makes a
benefit
good
is the same
Yeah.
as every
And
other
the
employee.
pension,
Well, I think they should be able to, I don't think they should get any portion. Their compensation should be the cash compensation plus the contribution that the city is giving to someone via the plan. I think that what could work is that it's total cash compensation. They will have the opportunity to pay into the city's plan if they want to, because sometimes these group plans, they may not be able to get insurance otherwise, there may be some reason why they want to be in the city's plan. But otherwise.
But
they
you think
don't.
they should do it like any other employee would?
No, they're not an employee. I don't think we should look at them that way. I think we should, the idea here is not to have this sort of undefined benefit that they get.
Look, health insurance is a wonderful benefit.
Yeah.
For those who
And it's
need
an
it, it's.
employee
But only
it's-
two people are using it, right?
Right
It's
now.
choice.
Right
now, you might
now.
have seven that do, in the next election.
But the question is, do you need to offer that benefit in order to get the kind of people you want?
Come on,
As long as you give them the opportunity to participate in the plan, but right now what you're doing is you're giving more compensation and in effect to those commissioners who participate in the plan, and those that don't are not getting the
That's their
benefit of that.
choice.
So that's why I'm saying level field.
All right, but that's a
everybody
choice.
gets the same-
That's
Right,
the
it's
choice
a
the
choice.
individual makes to either join, everybody, Galbro was given the choice to get a stipend, he chose to take a lesser stipend. that's his choice. The next mayor may choose to take the full stipend. That's not I wouldn't,
Should the
So when
chair,
the resolution was adopted, he excluded the mayor.
oh, so it's, the next mayor is also.
Yeah.
No, I'm not being.
No, I'm
trying
saying, do you
to-
wanna be punitive?
No, I would, look, I think that's a sunk cost. As long as it's what it is today, which is they can participate in the plan. They pay their portion of the premium like every other employee pays, and what is that?
so if you look at what I passed out, I gave
Which one?
everyone page 5 and 6, which
Okay.
was the summary of health insurance. I gave you the entire benefit booklet, which I can send to the whole team, through an electronic link as soon as the meeting is complete. So if you look, there's 2 plans, there's the regular health plan, Cigna Open Access on page 5. At the bottom of the page, you see $85 semi-monthly contribution.
For
What
the
that,
employee only,
for
that's
employee
the
only,
individual.
up to family at $364.
Yeah.
Now, what does
This is
semi-monthly
semi-
mean? It means, basically 24 payments a
24 of
year.
these.
So
it's
there's
two
2
per month.
months that you get a 3 paycheck, and in those 2 months that you have 3 paychecks, there is no health contribution. It's
So what is-
taking the
What
total
does that end with?
divided by 24.
364 times 24, that's.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
This is what the employee would pay,
Pays. This is the city. the
and then there's a
employee
city
contribution.
portion on top of it.
Yes. If you
So, Ron, I think we should offer the benefit.
368 annually.
However, you might, you know, you wanna limit it somewhat, you might say, well, for the individual. And not allow a family or dependents, that's but
I consider the benefits, this a benefit, and I recognize it's a part of total package, but usually you split your package into compensation and benefits. Now, if we were a city, and there are some that said, if you opt out of our health plan, we'll give you a stipend towards your own. We're not doing that now, and I don't think we will do that any time in the future, therefore it's not gonna turn to a cash value. And if you flip to the back,
Marla, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
My question still remains. It's so this is what the employee pays.
Yes.
364 twice a month, except for those 2 months, that 3. Is this 50% of the premium, 30% of the premium?
so remember, we're
80%?
self-insured.
Okay,
So we have a more complicated thing than just, oh, here's what the city is paying towards a premium versus. an
Right.
employee. We're just paying all the medical bills out of a maintained
Purple.
self-insurance fund, and we have to maintain X number of reserves, and so some years. You know, our portion of the premium is X, and the other years, our portion of the premium is Y, and we have to plan for that over a period of many years, so. We have averages of what our city portion is, but basically we're paying.
generally, what do you think that? turns
I,
out to be?
I don't have it memorized, but I'll text my benefits manager while we're talking, and I'll get you the number while.
You don't wanna
we're talking.
incentivize behavior and say, well, they'll
Yeah.
give themselves a different health insurance plan. I don't, you know,
So if you flip to the back, this is called the open access plan. This is a high deductible plan. So in the high deductible plan, you're paying less as an employee upfront. You're building up an out-of-pocket payment card that rolls over each year. So after a couple of years of your rollover, theoretically are building up your own deductible, but you're saying, I'm going to opt into a high deductible plan where I am, after my deductible covered at 100%.
all right, that, we can see about that. So what does the group think about health insurance? They have it today. I've got one sentiment that says we shouldn't include it. Anybody else have comments on that? Pardon?
I'm all in favor of it.
Sure. Elizabeth,
I'm in favor.
Brian?
I don't have a strong opinion on this. It sounds like barely anyone's using it.
Michael?
I really don't have a strong opinion. Only 2 of the commissioners are taking health insurance
Currently.
right now.
That doesn't mean they won't in the future.
No, I understand
Yeah.
that, but I'm just, I would think that folks I think Lieutenant might not be taking it. If you're employed full-time, you're probably getting some package from your employer. I would suspect that the greater majority of current future commissioners are gonna be in that position. The retired commissioner probably got Medicare and a supplemental. I'm just wondering who is getting when I think about it, who are the two?
Can I speak to the supplemental? So this is the first year that our health insurance has a Medicare Advantage plan. We didn't offer it until this year. So as people are aging and they elect to have our Medicare Advantage plan as a supplemental, we're gonna start seeing those numbers. We've never had before.
I'm let them keep their health insurance. I think that. I'm not interested in giving a stipend if they choose not to take it. But I think if they elect to take insurance, you know.
Just be clear, I don't think it's critical one way or the other. I'm not saying I'm not, because I wanted to present the logic behind why we might not want to do it, to see how that.
Understood. And so same question with pension. Anybody have strong feelings on the pension as it currently stands? Because we're not really in the position of trying to change the pension. But
I don't love this investment. I'd like to move it back to where it was.
Okay.
When do employees vest? If we're gonna use that.
5,
Well,
Right.
police
Or
and
was.
fire are now at 10. All the other employees are at 5 and now elected 7.
Yeah,
And that's speaking for you.
I think it should.
There was a logic for
I
5.
think it
Sure.
should go back to 5.
Is that within our scope?
That's an amendment to the pension ordinance,
Right.
so that's not really within your purview.
I agree
Because
with
it's
you.
not in.
Well, what we could put in here is that any change in vesting
Well, what we,
they can't do that.
right, what we
Again,
can do,
Any,
future,
yeah, any reduction, increase, they can make it more onerous, but they can't make it less.
can we do that?
And then we could potentially change the ordinance so that
Dude,
it locks it in at the 5.
So-
Follow.
So we're saying, so go back to summary. So we want to change the word of compensation. We're gonna fill in the blank on the number.
Right.
We want to close.
Wait, are we having a different number?
We're gonna,
Or that hasn't been decided yet?
we're gonna come up with the number yet. We're gonna close this so that they can't make any changes going forward.
Right.
Maybe revisit every 10 years, that the health insurance will be included, not as part of the number, but that is included as compensation. That they'll get pension, but Ron, I think what I'm hearing you say is that you can't make any amendment that enhances the benefit.
My
the
concern. my
Well,
concern with
enhances or vesting,
Well,
That's
wait a
the
second,
benefit.
are those pension matters, I know for unclassified they're not, but for classified, aren't they subject to collective bargaining?
yes.
Yeah.
Because we know that collective bargaining issues are not subject to referendum.
Yeah, but it's not like bargain.
Well, wouldn't it be impacting
We're saying
issues
this
that are
only for-
collectively bargained?
All this would be is any changes to the pension system that affects.
We're only talking elected officials.
My-
Oh,
Not
it's the
suggesting
elected
any-
officials, okay.
My concern with putting a requirement like that in the charter is each time we make changes to the pension ordinance, some of those require an actuarial analysis and there could be other reasons why, there could be financial or economic reasons why the city commission needs to amend the pension
So,
ordinance.
What Ron is saying, and I am agreeing, is you can't
Is it in
change
there?
the benefit.
Is it in here now, the pension?
And not,
No,
no,
Ron,
no,
But it- the
We're
charter,
not talking about the
It sounds
benefit.
like we're micromanaging.
Well-
only to the degree that you're closing the loop.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're saying here is what they're currently in the same plan as the employees, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying, so yes,
Lock it in.
I would not have a problem with if it's decided that all employees should get, the plan needs to be amended. And that changes the benefit for them, that's fine. But what I have a problem with is the elected officials getting something better, which in this case, that's what happened. They changed their vesting to 4 years when other employees are at 5 or at 10. That's the problem.
And that kind of, if you're I guess where the string that ties this, since we're saying compensation, then that is a form of total
Yes.
compensation, then it's in the charter. And what we're trying to say is the charter says that they can't give themselves anything more or new or different or better without a referendum. So we don't.
Then employees.
We would just have to add that,
Then
because
it-
And what
so-
they have today. I think what we're saying is what they have today.
Well,
Right.
they're trying to they're making the point that then there might be a disconnect between the employee plan and the.
We can do that. That's okay. That exists. There's
or
several,
maybe we.
there's tier A, tier B, tier C, there's all kinds of differences. among
Do we have a
employees
clue
are-
what it costs? I'm just,
It's not, it's
I don't
not,
think it's a cost issue.
these are the parameters for the pension, just so you understand. They're term limited, so they can only accrue pension benefit max. And that's as Jean said, if you are mayor for 3 terms and commissioner for 2 terms, so that's 14 years max
56%.
at 4% a year, which is what it is now, of their total compensation. And I guess it's the 5-year average, or I don't know how it's done for commissioners. Rick,
And it's the same.
the average,
Yes.
so it's not going to be a
41.
huge number. As it stands now, so. You know, just wait, I just want to put it in perspective.
no, I'm trying to get that perspective. You know, we're spending a lot of time talking about
Right,
this and. in
they're
the
not
grand
getting
scheme
rich off of
things-
their
no,
pension.
No,
It's
that
not like
doesn't really
City of
matter.
Miami, like
No, I
the
get
client that
doesn't
you
really
represented
matter.
in City of Miami. So,
So,
was getting a great pension.
so I guess where Ron was going, well, it was, it's still a benefit that they can give themselves. But we're trying to close that loophole.
Yeah, I guess I would like this language to be such that they can't keep coming up with new ideas for things that don't, and
You would think so, that's
conversation, because it wasn't mentioned specifically in the charter. And, you know, I saw the pension as an example of, it's not insignificant to the individual in terms of the amount of money they're getting. And so it's, we're talking, if somebody was in for 2 terms, then they'd be collecting half their compensation, and if we raise the compensation to 80,000, let's say, they're getting 40,000 a year times 3 or 4 commissioners, so you're talking, you know, $120,000 a year. For 3 of, you know, for 3 of them, 4 or more. And then that adds up over time. It's because it's every year.
So let me pose the question to you, Jim. So you were gonna keep something in here.
Was
that
a pension tied to total compensation or to salary?
Total compensation.
And we're now gonna
Increase
kind
it.
of make the salary total compensation anyway, so I think I guess it's the same number and increase it. But if you had something you said that you would keep the, you know, any future change or whatever would require an approval, you had something like that?
Voter
Right.
approval, yeah.
Right, because again, existing 202 says, let me just find it. Any increase in salary for mayor and commissioner shall require approval of the majority of the electorate voting at a city election.
if we
So we
substitute
are
salary-
keeping it in salary, but we're going to
That's gonna say
reference,
compensation.
because we're changing
We're gonna take
it
salary
all to
away and have it
compensation, so
compensation.
it would be retaining referendum requirement for any increase in
So
compensation.
my point is, if by keeping that language, aren't you accomplishing what Ron is looking to do?
Well,
Well, right.
we
that's what I
are,
was
because the
thinking.
ballot question will say something to the effect of, the compensation is the dollar amount in addition to the health insurance and pension.
And the pension then existing there, you can say, in existence at this time or something, so I didn't.
Do we have to carve out? the
I don't think we
pension?
need to say that, it'll be whatever it
It's-
is.
it's-
It'll be the pension and the insurance. So maybe we should say retaining or maybe
Existing.
expanding upon the voter approval requirement to address any form of compensation referenced in this ballot question or something
think
to that
that's-
effect.
Where you were going.
Expanding
But
is
if you're
a,
gonna define pension
mostly
as part of compensation,
right,
and you're saying you have to have a voter referendum for
Yeah.
it to be amended, then you've
Right.
kind of gotten what, you know, you're not gonna go back and change 4 to 5,
Bring it back to the board.
Yeah, something like that.
yeah, I'm not looking to undo that.
Yeah, I mean,
'cause-
I agree, we should spend a lot more time on it. That's the point. It's just, I think we should try to not be
So,
I just would ask that you all consider that we're managing a self-funded health plan, for example. And we don't anticipate what that self-funded health plan's benefits might change or what the federal government might require that our plan offer. And I would ask that you be cautious with the language in charter to not limit us carving out a whole plan just for them that stays at a certain level that doesn't track with our whole plan as a whole. So I would ask that you give that consideration.
That's a very good point.
Because they're
Right.
health plans, they're federal
Change.
guidelines that we have to change and, you know.
Well, can we limit it just to
Dollar amount and
compensation, pension,
Yeah, but
and
I kind of,
not have the
In all
healthcare
of our
plan?
Yeah.
ordinances, the language that has to do with medical and then has to do with pension. All of the language we use in the city is benefits. We don't call in any other document for employees. Those things, we don't call them compensation. We might say it's a compensation package, including, you know, multiple forms of salary and benefits, but we categorize health and pension as benefits.
why don't you guys maybe offline
I'm happy
put your
to
heads together, because I agree with that.
is
try to.
pension considered a benefit or compensation? Isn't pension considered compensation?
Compensation.
It's a
We
benefit.
call it a benefit. Once you're retired and you're receiving it, it's your compensation, of course, it becomes part of your income.
Yeah,
Right,
but
but we're not
Not-
talking about, you know, retirements, we're talking about
Right,
incumbents.
right. While you're
Yeah.
here, we would call pension.
So by the same token, while we're trying to fix this, don't create a separate loophole that says, okay, so they can give themselves any benefit.
No, I totally get that,
That's
but that's a
outside
very
the-
good point about the health
Yeah,
insurance.
I don't wanna.
Right,
be
we
in a
don't wanna
position
start
where, like, I'm
requiring
trying to
voter
interpret the
approval.
charter
Right.
to know
If
I
the health
can-
insurance benefit is tweaked,
Right,
yeah,
do I have
that's
to,
a good
if
point.
I pay for their
That's
birth
very-
control pills, am I giving them a benefit and going against the charter? You know, like
That's-
federal law said that all of a sudden you have to pay for certain
Right,
things,
so-
you know.
So really, all that we're talking about is voter approval for the dollar amount of the compensation and any
And no
amendment to the pension ordinance that could somehow increase
fair benefits.
their benefits.
So just a question for Nick, if there's an ordinance that you're changing that increases the pension benefits for all employees, you would have to carve out those elected.
Yes, we would.
Yeah.
Yeah, under this hypothetical, we would.
Right.
But you already have a separate class for
Yeah.
elections
Yeah.
anyway.
We run that section.
So two things
Little
left in my
challenge.
head.
Yeah.
Is there interest in trying to create something that would prevent the situation of the mayor in Miami from what's happening here? The idea of enriching themselves or in some way using the position for personal gain of some sort. I think that's been in the news enough that it would pop up if I were a voter to say, hey, wait a minute, we're gonna give them a salary. How do I know?
Isn't there kind of ethical guidelines and laws that govern?
Yes.
There are, but
Well,
the
issue-
situation with the
They do, and there you
But
go.
but the issue in my mind is really transparency. You
Well,
know,
I think it's more than that. I think it's proper contractual relationships that an elected official has. I don't mean to point out Miami in particular. But when you read those articles about what's been going on with the mayor of Miami, it seems that because there was disclosure, they knew about the dollar amounts that he was receiving. That's a matter of public record. But it seems like no one, other than, and I know there's ongoing state attorney's investigation going on, but no one affirmatively knows if those outside independent consulting gigs that the mayor had were consistent with the ethics rules or not. So maybe this could fly into the ballot question requiring the elected officials to seek an ethics, which of course, because it would be within the course and scope of their duty, would be a public record. So we could
I
put in
think
the
part of the
text.
question, Judy, was though that
That'll be filed.
ultimately there was disclosure.
right,
But
Oh,
there
yeah,
wasn't
no, that's
disclosure.
what
but
it-
the
The
disclosure
issue, the
along.
problem,
and
like
that-
from what I
and that
thought,
was
it's
the
not really
problem.
disclosure.
And then,
right?
and the
It was
other thing
only
is, and if
disclosed
you
after
don't
the
know,
newspaper
then
footage.
what do you know to disclose, or how do you know they're not disclosing what they're supposed to disclose?
You know, every city has its own personality, but in Miami, at least my take on it, you hear about these things that go on, but you need people to actively move the needle, to file an opinion request, or the elected official, him or herself, to take it upon them, because you don't have
Yeah, but
to.
Gene, if I'm dishonest, I'm not gonna make a request. I'm
You're
gonna
right,
keep
but
it,
the citizens can.
but which calls the question in the beginning. We brought folks in here to talk about what happened. Do we want Jose Arroyo
Oh.
of the Ethics
You know,
Commission
that's
to
not a bad
come
idea.
here
That would be.
and maybe
That's a good idea.
share ideas? Jose's a friend. I could call Jose,
Okay.
and see if he's willing to do it.
I think a lot of people don't want to, file those because they don't wanna, they just, they want to just.
So there's a circumstance where, you know, if I don't disclose, then who knows whether I should disclose or not. But what
Well, I
happens
wanna say
if
one
I
thing
didn't
about-
disclose and then it's discovered? Is that an ethical thing or a
Yeah.
legal thing?
Well, the disclosure rules, we're talking about private source of income.
Yeah,
Other
so
than
so
your
say
public income.
say I'm an elected official, say, so I think it's an elected official, so it's nothing. And she was supposed to disclose something and she did. And then it is discovered later that
You didn't
that
disclose.
she should have disclosed something that she didn't.
There
Is
are,
that an ethics?
oh,
or
it
legal?
absolutely is, and there are
You
very
can report your
serious
tickets.
I mean,
penalties
you have permission.
under state law
Elected.
for failure to disclose. And one of
What's the
the
remedy?
penalties, there are several remedies, but one of them includes the power for the Ethics Commission to recommend removal of an official from office,
Who
as well
would,
as.
who would remove? The governor, the
Uh,
other commissioners?
Well, the
or-
Ethics Commission would have to have a hearing, just like
Right.
city commissions have, and they consider the penalties, and if they vote on that penalty, then the penalty gets transmitted, I think, to the governor's office.
So it's a recommendation to the governor to remove.
Yeah.
her.
But,
Would there also be legal situation?
well,
like a
there's
state
no
attorney's
private
office?
cause of action. If I, as a citizen, am unhappy that my elected official I discovered did not timely file at all their proper disclosure, there's no private cause of action, but what you do is the state ethics commission, they're the primary body that has responsibility over this annual financial disclosure, and the county to a degree does also. But the state ethics commission has auditors who review this very carefully. They're very serious about financial disclosure, I will tell you. And they send warning notices, and after a certain warning notice, not that they impose the
Yeah, but that's if
penalties.
you didn't fill out the form, but if they don't know that
Or
you're
if you didn't
supposed
do
to.
it at
fill
all.
So if
Oh, they,
this is in the circumstance where I'm just gonna not sell you anything and I'm gonna try to get away with it.
well, if you're asking me,
No, if they
If-
fill out, what happens in that case, they fill out the form.
Right.
The only time you're really get into trouble,
Omission.
if you don't turn in the
That's
form, 'cause
absolutely
I've
right.
represented people.
that's how.
They don't have the resources to investigate,
But- But they do take complaints alleging that somebody was a reporting individual failed to properly fill it out. And the Ethics Commission does investigate that, and I'm telling you, they take financial disclosure very, very seriously.
And now there's a higher level form that they have to fill out as well. So
Yes.
it's a,
Yeah.
Definition. How does I mean, kind of an aside, but I see why I'm bringing it up. A violation of the Sunshine Law. State attorney investigates. those,
Yes,
right?
right, that's not the Ethics.
What's the difference in? Why wouldn't the
a
state?
violation
attorney-
Quite
of
frankly,
sunshine
the,
law could be a criminal offense.
Right,
The ethical violation candidly rarely will rise to the ever level of a criminal offense.
And so someone would have to figure it out, know that they didn't do it and call them out. on it.
Yeah.
Him or her.
And then leave town.
Well, listen, I mean,
yeah,
you know, rules are put in place for those who are honest, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
So I still think that we should try to do something. Not just leave
I
it.
agree with you.
yes.
Is that something you guys can, or what do you guys? think?
Yes, as we're discussing, at the very least, which is a powerful requirement to require, because right now elected officials are not mandated to require them to seek an opinion. Because again, that the opinion request will be a public record filed with the clerk. And to put in some language, we wouldn't be able to put it in the ballot question, because remember, we discussed that we only have 75 words ballot language. But to put within the text, because it's a part of it, but it's not, it's relevant, but it's not necessarily a material part. But we could put within the text that upon receipt, the receipt shall also be a public record, may be required the clerk to notice it. Right. Somewhere, Because otherwise, what good is having an opinion if people don't know about it?
What do you guys think?
Transparency is
Brian?
always good.
I mean, no strong opinions here again. This all feel, I'll just be honest, this all feels very, very complex and a lot of moving parts for what is not a significant amount of money. That's kind of how I feel after, you know, we've put an hour and a half into this.
Okay, so I guess the last thing then is the number. What should the salary?
We make that number without knowing.
But we have to put a number in.
What?
The two primary donors. are the
Yeah.
salary-
Okay.
It's calling
Think about the,
expense
public
account.
record.
No, no, no.
Phone allowance is fairly small.
Okay, got it.
1,300 a year, and if you think that's it.
Yeah, no, it's, you know, what we're looking at now is, it's about 41,000 now. Inflation on 6 and 10 is somewhere in the 56 to 90 number. I don't like the big gap between the mayor and everybody else. And so really, what's a number? I'm not looking to replicate what we have now. I think there should be an increase.
That's my only concern with what was that's worth in 2019, which is there's such a, I get that it was driven by CPI, but it's such a big gap.
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel right.
But if you look at Miami, it's the same. I mean, the Miami numbers are.
But there's a
Miami
demand there,
numbers
the
are
mayor's
very
different.
inflated,
Yeah,
because
the
they
mayor's
also
different.
have a lot of interest to write there.
Are we gonna be, have our numbers be more than the city of Miami? That's where we're headed right now, a little bit.
Where's my?
Yeah.
No, Miami is
Page 43, you've got,
Miami in addition has a stipend on top of,
I see that,
right, so then I don't think that she.
but their salary, 58.2 and 97. But then they have all of this other stuff too. However, but if you're looking at just their salary.
Yeah, they get this
Who's
30,000.
voting on that? People are voting on this, so they're gonna look at it, you know, we can break it all down, but people are gonna look at it and go, wait a minute, what's that?
So,
All right, listen, I'm gonna put a number out there just to see if anybody has any interest in.
Yeah.
in it. 65,000 for the commissioners and $75,000 for the mayor. Does that seem reasonable?
Keep this in mind, if you think about it as, well, let's say hypothetically, it's a third of their time. So that's like an annual compensation of 3 times, what was your number?
65 and 75?
Yeah, so that's 225,000.
It's more than what they get now, right? Yeah. But-
35,000, yes.
Is that reasonable? Or I can go
yeah.
70 and 80 and I'm good with.
Yeah,
you
I'm
know,
somewhere in there too, that's what I.
70,000 for the commissioner and 80,000 for the mayor. I mean, we're now kind of, you know,
number,
it's, you know,
This is it for 10 years, right?
pardon?
This is it for 10 years.
Yeah.
right?
Not necessarily,
Right.
because,
Yeah,
you know, the
they-
charter just says that the 10-year
can ask.
thing is that the charter review board is required to convene every 10 years, but that doesn't mean
We can
that
change
there
it
can't be an initiative.
for sure.
There could be an initiative, or the commission on its own in
Put it on the
between could
ballot.
want to do it, or the commission on its own has full power to reconvene a charter review board within that 10 years.
This is, you know, you put your voter hat on now and
That's what I was
decide
trying to
what,
do.
you know, where would you draw the line and say, hey, you're too rich for my vote? You know, I'm trying to be fair and trying to put a number out there.
Well,
Well, you know, I mean, psychologically, maybe a smaller number with CPI would be more saleable than a higher number. I mean, I know we're seeing. Huh? Was that a no?
That was tried before and it failed.
Yeah,
Well,
guys.
and we're closing the loophole here.
Also, just remember
The
that each.
CPI thing never works.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, and
CPI thing never
each
worked.
We introduce is something that we have to reference in the ballot question, so I think we're like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It becomes
Yeah.
another layer of complexity.
Yeah.
yeah, you need
For
to
75 words.
start concentrating.
so
Look,
now if
I
we
could
limit
do
it,
80 and 90, I could do 70 and 80. I mean, in
75
that
and
ballpark.
85.
Just remember who's
Let's-
voting.
Let's not go.
Yeah, if the voters who aren't making 75 and 85, you know.
Yeah, as soon as you put something 80 plus, you're gonna get sticker shock and everyone will be against.
People are gonna go, I don't even have a car that costs.
How about 65,
Six-
75?
That's where it started, with, right?
you know, may I just put something out there that, so the process will be that when you all are done with all of your recommendations, we know that you have to present that to the city commission. Come the day that the city commission approves whichever or does not, whichever of your recommendations, then the city commission has to adopt resolutions actually placing the matter on the ballot. During that interim period between the time the city commission places the matter on the ballot for presentation to voters and the actual election day, part of the duty of the charter review board, unless the city commission, determines otherwise, but at least consistent with prior charter review boards, the city commission has requested and appreciated the charter review boards going out to the public to educate the voters, because as we discussed at one of our first meetings, a very critical element as part of making a record for the ballot language if we're challenged is to show that the city did everything it could, which it does, normally, but to educate the voters. And one of the elements of educating the voters is this board, the Charter Review Board, having citizen forums. And the reason why we like to refer to citizen forums is because we know Miami Beach used, and all municipalities in the state of Florida used to be able to do these voters guides. I'm sure you saw them, that the city attorneys would draft and it would be approved by the elected officials and by the administration. And it explained factually what the ballot question was. State law changed. We are no longer permitted to do that, except there are certain exceptions. One of the exceptions where you can explain this will be your role if the city commission, so agrees. One of your roles will be to go out at a citizens forum and tell the citizens factually what this is all about. Because one of the exceptions to that law that I just alluded to is that the city may present factual information during a forum. So keeping in mind that you're going to be doing that, that's why all of these, at least with regards to salary, the question will come up. Obviously, what do they get now? What do the elected officials receive now? And the answer is, what, 41 and 44?
41 and
So
44.
presenting an 85,000,
Does
No,
anybody know
some
what the average household salary is for Miami Beach?
Google it.
But before I say 85 or 95, if the average salary, I
Average or
would
median.
suspect it would be maybe close to that. I don't want to throw out some number which, a fair representation.
Oh, you'd be surprised. The average household income for Miami Beach is 116,000.
Average?
Or what's
It
the
says,
median?
well, median household income is 59,162.
There's the difference.
Average household income is 116,145.
Median is a better number.
But the
So medium.
Yes.
Yeah.
Median is,
Median.
half or more. half or-
59,162.
Okay, so that's $60,000.
Hours, and that's.
Okay,
And we're saying 65 and 75?
no, I understand
I mean, I'm just-
household, which why I asked the question, but it's a number, I think, in our calculus. To figure out what the number is going to be, that will be appealing to folks. $100,000 might be fair given CPI and everything else, but it's never gonna happen. So that's why I wanna find out what that number was, so we can. If at a citizen board or meeting or whatever, they say, well, how do you come up with that number? We had different things in our calculus, CPI from 1966 or whatever would be this, income is that, and we crunched all the numbers and we thought this was fair.
Based on through the chair, based on the fact that this has been the salary and compensation package since 1966, I tend to believe that it will be what it is for another 10 years at least. And so I'm comfortable with 65 and 75.
I haven't, coming around here, I have an idea. An idea. you're getting there, $41,000 is the commissioner's salary. If we gave a 30% raise to that.
We wanna call it salary. It's
All right,
compensation.
but here it's happening now, the number we calculated now, a 30% increase to that is $53,000. And 30% increase, I'm factoring, if we allow this to be reviewed every 10 years. That's an average of 3% per year, which is kind of what we assume is COLA every year. At least there's a logic to that number. 44 times 30% is 57. Or you can do, what did I say the other one, 41, there would be 60 for the mayor. And 55. And at least you can say it's tied to, we can project out, assume a 3% increase each year in COLA. We'll give it to you now.
No
and
more
you-
than 3%.
And that on average is, it's a 30% increase from what you have today, give or take.
I like the number.
And it's
Yeah.
starts to fit a little bit into the median household income. It's not, it's more than it is today. It's a 30% increase.
That's a
And
lot more than.
and it locks the loophole, but it doesn't go to the point of outrageous. I can stand up and say, look, 3% per year for the next 10 years are locked in for 10 years. That's not the end of the world.
So what was the 44, the mayor's plus the 30? What was that?
I think that was. So
Did you say
there's
roughly?
44,000. 1.3. You guys can do the, actually, it's 57,000.
57. Well, look,
and-
it's a rational explanation. But when you do your, I mean, we'll have discussions before you do your citizens forum about the legal limitations on what, on the presentation. We'll do that when we get to it.
You can even round it up to do 60 and
Well,
55.
we've got time. Why don't we just say for now, we just pencil it in as a number and we can talk about it more
53
in
and
the future.
57.
I'll do 55 and 60.
I'll
yeah.
go 55, 60.
But the basis of it is that it's basically 3% per year for the next 10 years.
Yeah, you include compounding. all that.
But that's.
Right.
It's just no more than, just,
At least it's not. Hanging out today.
you're not going up to CPI today.
So
So
60
55 and 60.
55 and 60.
55 and 60.
55 and 60. Actually, ironically, 6,000. The CPI for today is
And
56,000.
no CPI?
No.
So you kind of, we're already there.
I got that. Are there others on this?
And just to be clear, based on, in part, on Marlo's comments, we are going to carve out health insurance. That amount fluctuates and is.
From the
is-
voter.
Yeah,
approval.
Is subject to change.
From the voter.
I don't
Yeah, from the voter.
think we can. We should put some language in there about, just making it clear in the text or something like that.
Right.
Rather than language in the question.
No, if we're talking about retaining voter approval, we're referencing,
No, I think you guys were gonna put your heads
We
together and see
will,
what it is.
but
that
I'm
you-
just saying,
I think we wanted to carve that out.
Yeah, we can.
yes, but
allow
I don't
for-
know if we can carve that out and not include it in the ballot
No, we-
question, but we'll figure it out.
We need, yeah, we'll include it.
We'll, that we're carving it out.
Yeah.
Right.
But not the pension,
What?
but not the pension. The pension. you
No,
want
the dollar amount and the pension are subject to voter approval.
Right.
Right.
The health insurance cannot be subject to voter approval.
Right.
And then some, the disclosure.
That's the
that you were
carve out.
talking about.
And the disclosure, right?
Anybody else on this one?
I mean, not the disclosure, the
They were-
duty to seek
Seek an ethics.
the opinion.
Brian, how you feel about all that?
I'm fine with this. I think that's fine. I mean, there's no right number here. I mean, we're all making our best efforts to kind of put our finger in the air to some extent and pick a fair number. I think for most of the people pursuing these jobs, none of the numbers we're talking about are consistent with, what they would consider a living wage. Again, most of these folks pursuing the mayor's office or who served as mayor have been lawyers, have had successful business careers. So I don't think they're doing this over 58,000 versus 65 versus 75,000. I think they're doing it because they want to serve the community. But I also think I do think we're doing the right thing, trying to be sensitive to the fact that a lot of the folks voting do see a difference between, 45 versus 55 versus 75,000. And I think we're doing a good job of reflecting that sensitivity.
Okay, do we want to, someone make a motion on this?
Want to recap it again?
Then what you recap it?
So the consensus is to, first of all, define everything as compensation. Except for health insurance. And the amounts are 60,000 a year for mayor, 55,000 a year for commissioner. And we would also include an affirmative requirement for members of the city commission to seek an opinion of the ethics commission as to any potential conflicting employment or other sources of income.
Or any outside, like
Outside-
private
outside of-
safety.
Yeah, outside of-
Yeah, well, it can't be employment because employment is just employment, like the city of Miami, the mayor. Those
Yeah,
are all
any
the
outside
same.
compensation.
Private compensated jobs.
Whatever, you guys come up with
You
the term, it's
Yeah.
not just a job, it's a consulting gig, it's any outside
compensation.
compensation.
Okay.
Well,
Isn't that?
It's
too
okay.
much?
outside,
That's a
outside
little
the
hard
target,
every time
yeah.
you get
I
it.
liked outside employment, that sounded good.
Yeah, but then we just. need-
So the assignment-
like this.
Every time they get a consulting assignment.
They were in the-
Now what we're seeing is the issue with,
So outside,
Well,
what did you say?
Should we
Outside-
define it in a little more narrowly?
Any outside-
this is, guys,
Or no, I limited to employment.
What about,
Yeah, well. or
what about
anything
employment or any
work-
contractual?
Yeah.
Or any contractual
Yes.
arrangements? Yeah, because they could
Well,
receive,
now-
they
Yeah,
could
because
have,
let's say you have investments.
yeah, no,
Right.
I'm not suggesting
No,
that.
but it maybe wouldn't be a contractual relation,
Yeah.
you know?
Where they, yeah,
I think it should just be
we can,
any outside private compensated, and there's some word there, it's not
for
employment.
service or for
Well,
Or
services.
business
rendered.
relationships or.
I think I understand the
Yeah.
spirit of where, I think. we
Yeah.
can- we
Look,
can-
if they wanna go into business, I'm not sure that that's what I'm looking at, but if they are, I mean, it's the example that's in the news today, where,
Yeah,
if
But
they're
that's
getting
not
these
what
gigs
employment is.
primarily because
Right.
of the position they hold, I
Right.
think that should be an issue.
Right,
If they are consultants and they work for a
Yeah, but
consulting
if they-
company and they get consulting job in the normal course of business,
Well, that's outside of.
Yeah, but what if they get a job as a painting contract, you know? I mean, somehow it seems like we're saying anything they do, and really what we wanna get
Just
at
get
is
another
something that
business
could be a
ethics agreement.
potential
Or
conflict
do you wanna
of
know what the
interest.
dollar amount, like anything over X amount?
no, I
No.
don't think we do.
Okay,
No,
No,
but
because
I
it
wonder,
really isn't, at least under ethics laws, it's not so much the dollar amount, it's the relationship, the prohibited relationship.
right.
But I know what you mean, like what if they're, or they
I mean,
get
it's-
$10 from their aunt. for the birthday.
yeah, it's way
You
too
know.
broad, it needs to somehow be a little
Huh?
more.
but that's not compensation, I mean, either.
But it's.
But if I'm a
Oh,
painter, if I'm a
compensation.
painter.
Yeah, let's just put it compensation,
If- if-
outside
if you
private
guys-
compensation.
Highlighting, I
Outside
mean, this is gonna
private
come back,
compensation.
if I'm a painter and
Yeah.
I do painting, that's great, but
That's
all of a
all
sudden,
the- that's the-
every,
Yeah.
person that does business in Miami Beach starts hiring me as a painter, cause I'm a commissioner. I think that
Right.
might be a problem.
Right.
Or if I'm a lawyer, and if all of a sudden every time a client needs a lawyer, I'm the guy they call, and I'm a commissioner, I think that's a
You
problem.
could track the language from the statute.
Well, the statute says, it goes towards contractual relationship.
I-
And,
Working through, we are
but
gonna.
here's
over
what,
here.
the county and the state
Should I get
matters a
Jose
little bit more
here? We
complicated,
can.
define
That's okay,
things
come back.
differently.
So let's,
So that's what
you
we
guys
should
can
do,
start
but
working
yeah.
the language,
Yeah.
'cause this is gonna come back, but I guess the consensus
Compensation
is,
good.
we wanna solve
Yeah.
that, solve the dollar, call it compensation. Carve out the health insurance and close this loophole, or not loophole, close it, make it clear that any future changes is requiring a referendum. Is that what we did today?
I just wanted to
So-
clarify, the dollar amounts exclude pension.
We are.
Yeah.
The very last one.
Which are good.
The dollar amount excludes pension.
Yes,
Like,
it's
you
the
need to
dollar
say
amount
that.
plus pension. Pardon?
Health insurance is going to say for compensation including pension.
No mention in the matter, so it's
Maybe we
not
lead
part of
with
the
the prohibition.
compensation.
It needs to be
What do you
clear.
guys?
Okay,
Yeah, we'll figure out.
that was a good point.
What was that?
It needs to be, the pension needs to be,
Clear that it's not a part of the.
The value,
compensation.
I think you're saying it's the number,
Yeah.
you're not gonna deduct from the salary.
Right, it's the
Right,
city, it's
it'll
the
be the-
city's contribution. It's the city's contribution is what you're talking about, right?
Well, so the city has a contribution that we pay into the pension
Right.
plan, I'm assuming that's excluded from this dollar amount.
Yes.
That wasn't.
That's
included.
excluded.
It's excluded as in this the dollars we came
Right,
up with.
we can, you know, we'll come up with some bad language, and if you want, we'll present it to you at the next meeting.
Yes,
But we just want to be sure, because, you know, these ballot questions are challenged frequently for voter confusion or failure to state the chief purpose. So it's all about the wording, and that's, you know,
but to
I
me,
know
that's
we
clear.
seem like we're being very particular, but that's
What Tamika,
our
I think,
thing,
is
that's what we
saying,
have to do.
correct me if I'm wrong, is that if the percent of payroll, say it's 10% of payroll, 25, whatever, let's use 10 for an easy number. It's not gonna be that 65,000, it's gonna be reduced by 6,500
Exactly.
to pay for the pension.
Right.
It's
Right.
65,000
You get a flat dollar
wage,
amount,
that amount
But we
goes
need to
into
make sure
the
in the
paycheck.
ballot question,
It's
they're
clear.
still getting their pension
Yeah.
and their health
Yeah,
insurance.
well, I don't wanna take
Right.
away pension, don't take
Exactly.
up.
Right,
So work up the language.
yes.
Um,
You want it at the next.
Mike is right, what we should, somebody call Jose's office, or Mike, you wanna call Jose's office?
I can talk.
And see if he can come
The
to
next
the next
meeting is
meeting?
October 11th.
Okay.
And we also have Christina White coming in.
Which, or which one?
For the October 11th.
So should I ask them for
I'm
that one?
just giving you the information that we have.
What's the next one after the 11th? November.
November.
Let's do that, that's okay, because they're gonna need time to work
Okay.
this language.
I'll talk to Jose and give him 2 months.
It's on the 11th.
More likely he'll be able to do
Tuesday,
it.
the 10th.
Rick, you had a question?
Yeah, it's 11.
Right now,
Thank you.
It's October 10th, October 10th.
I have to
Percent
say-
on the 6th and the 10th.
Okay.
They pay, oh, that's the employee contribution?
Not on the W, not on the rest, just on the 6th and
Right.
the 10th, the supervisor election. So does that mean it's gonna be on the
I think it is,
10 on the 60 and the 50? Is that
Yeah.
what we're looking at?
I believe so. The employee contribution is whatever the employee contribution is.
Right.
So to make sure that the ballot questions are clear.
Yes.
Because there's,
That's-
Okay,
For the-
that's,
you know,
That's the challenge with introducing.
it's just. People say no because they just don't understand. And somebody will say, "Well, what does this mean? That, can we increase, it's, what is it, 85 words?
75.
75? We can't.
No, it's under state law.
And I think we start with
Okay.
the prohibitions that we're getting.
Right.
And put in the benefits that we're getting.
Right.
That at least like good. Marla.
So, I guess the reason you're paying, that they're paying their contribution against the 6 and the 10 and not the broader compensation is because of the word salary. So in other words, what's key to this, because the pension ordinance is saying salary, we don't want to go back and have to redefine everything in the pension ordinance. So basically what you're doing in charter is you're, I guess, redefining what the salary.
We've changed the word salary. We're abandoning the word salary in the
Yeah,
chart.
but she's
Right.
saying,
You need to understand that the word loops back to the pension ordinance. The reason they're paying, correct me if I'm wrong, 6 and 10.
Because that's
If
their
they're
salary.
paying their contribution on 6 and 10 is because of the definition of the word salary, which is currently.
I want to pose a question to the committee and forgive me if I'm overstepping. You know, but you've done a lot of
No.
work here. I'm sorry, but you know, you've done a lot of work here because the main goal was to change salary to compensation because as Ron made clear, right now, as this stands, the only thing that's subject to voter referendum is salary. So conceivably, a commissioner could change their car allowance from $500 a month to $1,000 a month or whatever it is without voter referendum. And I think that was a very prudent change. There's also been a lot of, the decision not to include CPI. In searching your souls and realizing that this is hopefully something that has never passed, that you want to pass. There may be unintended consequences. Is it the will of the committee at this time to really include the thing about pension? And I really ask you to search your souls on this because you're doing a lot here. And, if that is the will, we will draft it. But my concern is that putting a lot in there might lead to things that we may not understand right now.
What do you mean?
Whereas
by the thing of the pension?
The requirement of, you know, what we're talking about now about increasing pension benefits. You know, would require voter approval. I mean, it's my opinion.
But I think Roland, I think.
No, the committee has. I'm kind of stepping out of my bounds to
no.
ask you. Having considered everything you're doing here and prioritizing everything you're doing here. I mean, really, when you think of it at this time, pension benefits for a city commissioner are negligible.
I guess, I think we landed on the.
We're talking about city contributions, all these things.
No.
I don't want us to adopt something that we don't fully understand.
I get it, but I thought that we kind of landed at if we're saying pension is part of compensation. Then keeping this sentence that says any increase in compensation will require a voter approval was all we wanted to do.
Is that what we're talking about? Because,
Well, again, this ballot
That's what
question
we-
is about
I
increasing
remember that, yeah.
compensation.
right,
So whatever fits under that definition of compensation, we know part of the definition is the dollar amount.
right.
And the discussion has been that compensation is also pension and health insurance.
So
Well,
Should
hang
be
on,
that's
time
the-
out.
this-
Gene, let me help you.
No,
What
I'm
you're-
just saying,
I
in
get it.
terms of
Let
the
me answer your
ballot question,
right?
Again, we have to present
What-
the chief purpose of the measure. If
What-
we're saying the compensation is increased, we can't show just the dollar amount, we can't.
No,
compensation.
Gene, but here, what we're saying is that whether you call it a stipend. Or a car allowance, or a cell phone allowance, or a playground allowance, or a membership to a club. We're saying all of those things, whatever anybody creatively can come up with. Should be part of compensation for purposes of this charter. So that there is no incentive to do that anymore. We're saying we're gonna pay you 60 and we're gonna have 60 and 55. And that's it. You can't create anything new. You can't give yourself anything new. You'll get health insurance and you'll get pension. As it stands today. I thought that's where we
But
landed.
I think the whole point was, and
salary-
you help me with
salary has-
this,
salary is
if I say. My salary was 6,000, my pension was based upon a $6,000 salary, now my salary is 60,000, that will have an effect on
Let me
pension.
explain what existed. I was here. The employee contribution. Is based on the salary of $6,000. But when we come out to calculate what that employee, let me just say, the commissioner or the elected official's salary is based on the salary, so a commissioner pays $600. But when it's time to calculate their benefit, we don't go to $6,000, we go to 40.
Oh, okay, you use that number regardless,
Yeah.
okay, well then.
So they were, so they were paying
Right,
less.
Okay, okay.
They were paying less.
And it's
Now they
Well, I was
pay
just
more.
curious
goes,
if you
you
could,
know, after
fudge
the
the
charter, after the charter is amended, whatever goes to
They
the
have to
voters
change the
and
charter.
whatever is approved by the voters, there would still need to be housekeeping amendments to ordinances to
Right.
conform to whatever charter amendments
Yeah.
there are. And one of the housekeeping amendments that we might have to
Well, the
do is
pension
amend the
board-
pension
pension,
ordinance or
Rick?
salary to reference the amended charter provision.
So please
That's-
understand that if you broaden yourself to other employees. We define salary as all cash compensation. But not every cash compensation is pensionable. Phone allowances are not pensionable, car allowances are not pensionable, uniform allowance are not pensionable. But depending on if I'm in the firefighter group, or if I'm in the police group, if I'm in the general employees group,
For the elected
we
officials.
say pay by pay in every contract, if this pay is pensionable or non-pensionable.
But in,
So each group has this weird mix of pensionable and non-pensionable. So I guess rather than try to shift everything in the city to the word compensation, that's a pretty big unintended consequence.
doing
it for
It's
Just
only
the
for the
elected
elected
officials,
officials.
just the
Number one.
elected.
I just wanna point out.
It's only for the elected.
While we're talking about unintended consequences, the word salary is one
But
of those
there's
things
it's
you have to
purposeful.
think about.
we're purposely doing it, because right now it says salary. Has to go to the voters, and then we somehow found that from 6, we went to 44.
And
So
the
we're trying
other
to say it's,
thing is, while there are benefits of which pension and health insurance are the largest, most valuable. everything else on the benefit book, they can avail themselves of as well. If they want to buy pet insurance, they can buy pet insurance. If they want to buy disability, they can buy, so. I don't want to not tell you that there are other benefits besides, that they can buy into besides just.
Well, with
But those are
life
employee paid,
insurance
those
going-
are employee paid, right? Those are provided by the city, those are
Yeah, they're-
fully funded by the employee.
I think most of them are employee paid,
Figure-
because we
figure it out.
negotiate rates, but I'm trying to
Oh, yeah,
think if
well,
there's any
Well, I
that
think
are.
the only ones of those that the city contributes to are maybe like the supplemental life, the term life, or.
They get for supplemental life, let me find out.
And that's,
Um,
I think, minor, because.
It's-
That's gotta be
That
good.
is-
It's probably like $10,000 or $20,000, it's very small.
Other than that, I don't think the city contributes to the.
Correct,
Not
but
to pet
I did
insurance?
want to
No.
disclose, no, we
No,
don't.
we do not.
But I did want to disclose.
No,
that
they should still be
It's
eligible
not
to
just-
sign up for
We're
it if
not
they pay
saying
for
that
it.
they can't participate in anything, they're gonna pay for whatever they have to pay for.
Are you clear with the pension stuff, Greg?
Yes.
Are you clear with it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the employee rate will be on the wages now, which was.
56,000.
So if this passes, we will amend the pension
You
ordinance.
think you-
Okay. Yeah, okay. You know, I prefer to bring it up now here in an informal session than it come up later.
Yeah, Ro-
So thank
That's a
you.
good point, Roland, because the prior ballot questions have only been dollar amounts.
And that's a bad
This is,
place.
Well, one of the
this is
issues-
not changing anything in the pension system.
Jane,
We're not
moving
changing the
forward,
pension
one of the
benefits.
issues will
It's
be,
just the salary.
do we present the entire change? Our entire editing of it as up or down, or do we break it up into different parts?
We need
So,
different ballot questions. So
yeah.
that's
Yeah,
for
you tell me,
No, I
because,
think it's better to have it in
Yeah, I
one.
think it's.
well, I would say that too, but I'm a little concerned over the issue of putting a compensation package in there and that skewing it in some fashion with the voters, saying, wait a second, I like this, but I don't think somebody should make $60,000 or $75,000 and I'm just not gonna vote it, and all this work's gonna go
Well, then
down.
it
the
won't
tubes.
pass.
Well, no, then it won't pass,
Right.
and then we spent all this time,
True. I-
you know, and
But
that
they do
concerns me.
every 3
True.
years.
I mean, we don't need an answer today, but I just bring that up.
Yeah, I mean, one alternative would be to say that we're gonna eliminate the salary, we're gonna replace it with compensation, and their compensation will be no greater than what they currently receive. So that if a voter is voting for this, they're not voting for an increase. Well, they're getting, I know,
Yeah,
they're gonna get.
I'm of the opinion, I'd like to bring the salary to a more reasonable place, and if that is traded with closing the loophole and kind of locking it in. You know, that's the trade I'm willing to put to the voter and let them decide. I'd hate to kind of lock their hands and then.
Probably in the wording.
So
You
it's
know,
up to you
and
guys.
so in terms
I
of
see what you're,
separate ballot
I see what
questions,
you're saying.
You can turn this into two
Right.
questions. easy.
but it, I'm sorry,
You can turn this into two questions.
you
easy.
turn it, you turn it three
Yeah,
questions.
but it should be.
But
one.
we have to keep in mind, if we're looking at the November twenty
Yeah, how many
twenty-four
questions
ballot,
do you
that
have?
is going
But I
to
see
be
what
a
Ron is
very
saying, Ron
big
is saying
ballot.
what the compensation
And
is
Miami
today.
Beach, right, Ralph? It's Miami Beach.
No
Where
increases
after
beyond
federal,
that.
Let's increase it.
You
state,
want to increase the
county,
number.
then it's Miami Beach.
Oh, God.
Unless. it's-
So that is a very long ballot, so you need to be thinking, I know we're not there, it's way premature, but the number of ballot questions that are gonna be presented, so I would
Alright,
not
so let's,
recommend.
you have what you need for this? one?
Yeah.
Yes, we
Can
do.
we at least give a tentative consensus to them to?
Yes.
I think. we want to say something.
Who wanted to say?
Rick,
I just have the pension ordinance, and I just wanted to read the language. That for the elected official, city manager, or city attorney shall be 4% of final average monthly earnings, that's the word, earnings. And then earnings as an elected official, city manager, or city attorney shall include up to total compensation plus any other payments or allowance. Total W-2 compensation.
So total compensation, Marla said, no car allowance, no.
Right.
phone. That's it. So
No,
for the elected
no,
official,
you
are they
said-
included?
Total
Total
compensation
W-2, total
W2.
W-2
So
compensation.
the
no,
car and whatever will appear in your W two.
No, but I.
Plus any other payments or
So it
allowance.
sounds like I should be making a pension when we're not.
What is?
So my question is.
No, no,
for the
it should be
phone-
pension.
for-
So-
For the phone allowance, and what was the other one you mentioned? Marla?
own, but they also get the stipends for this.
Plus any other payments or allowances,
So those count.
those count, yeah.
Yeah.
But
But when you change it to
earnings.
earnings to 60, it's just gonna be earnings, it's still gonna be pension. I don't know if you have to change the pension.
That's what I'm saying, so
Wait,
you're not gonna need to
that's
change.
like-
No,
the
you have to change the pension rights to add the
I
language
told
in the
you.
charter. I think you do.
Oh,
Well, that's,
So you
you know,
can tell me
like,
after that.
I'm just a consultant.
No, you'll decide it. The charter will pass and it says your pension is based on now the $65,000, the pension.
So
will
you're
just
not
take that.
relying on
But
our.
do you have what you need?
peers
Yes.
Yes, we do.
code
So
or
we
create
all
your own pension.
tentatively give a consensus that that's where we're headed.
no, it's-
Cause I believe I have that.
Yes.
Move it, yes.
Yeah,
I'll second.
Moved by Julie, second by Elizabeth.
So just for the record, the next meeting is October tenth.
Wait a minute, we're gonna take a vote on this.
Got it? All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
do you want the ballot question for the next meeting?
I would like to bring the ballot question when Jose is here.
Is he here at the next meeting?
Well, that's what I was to say. We have Christina White coming, the supervisor of elections,
On
on the October tenth. To discuss a request that the Department of Elections has made. If he is coming, I would also like to discuss 6.03. Which has to do with qualifying, and the reason I ask is because one of the sections in qualifying is that they have to pay 7.5% of their salary. To qualify, so this will have a large impact on the
Yes.
qualifying fee,
Agreed.
and the state also requires that they pay 1%. To qualify, so there is 8.5% that they pay to run for office, unless they collect signatures or there's other
right,
ways.
I was gonna say, taking collect signature.
Correct,
1,200, right?
Oh,
But-
so we're gonna need to change
so
that
that section
salary
needs to be
compensation.
also,
So great,
looked at.
oh.
And vacancies.
yeah,
So
so
we were talking about vacancies today.
Because we have other
Gonna-
proposed amendments that we'll discuss with you at that point about 603 also.
Well, how much time will we have then on the 10th with Ms. White and whoever else you wanna bring?
well, that's why is the only one invited, that's why I want to make
Okay.
sure that Joe was, that she's talking about elections, this is an election
Can
matter.
we do them both
Right.
at the same time, on the same time?
I just,
Well,
would want-
Christina, I mean, the runoff shouldn't be more than an hour. with
Right.
the-
and I know that this body has also wanted to ask Ms. White questions regarding types of
Elections.
elections.
Oh, right.
So you
form of
may-
election.
It may take up longer than,
I wouldn't do those on the same meeting. I think we'd want, I don't know that we're going to keep one waiting for the
Yeah,
other. I mean, they're both.
Mhm.
So, when is that again? October what?
October 10th is
October
when.
10th.
I got
And
yours.
then what's the other one?
Here you go, Chloe.
November.
Yeah.
November, the next one is November 14th.
Look, I'll call Jose, say November 14th, see if there's any issue. If he says, I'm out of town,
And do that.
maybe I'll say, or maybe we can all discuss extending
Right.
a half
I
hour.
was
Yeah.
gonna say,
You
let's
know, to get
just make
Jose
it a
here.
little bit longer.
And maybe set a time where he comes in as.
Okay.
To be here from 5 o'clock. you can come in. Okay.
So November 14th.
So,
There you go.
there you go. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. It is 7:37.
No worries.
Thank you, everyone. I'm turning the bell.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.